love to bang that thing. Welcome to the Governing Board, Cabrillo Unified School District Governing Board meeting, June 1st. The school board met in closed session from 6 to 7 and took no action. We're reconvening open session at 7 p.m. And it brings us to item 6, our Pledge of Allegiance. And Siobhan, you're going to be leading us. We appreciate that. The flag's up here.
Do I go up here?
Sure, why not? Yeah, why don't you come up? You can have it if you want it, yeah, so it becomes red. One more.
It's very fussy.
Okay.
There you go.
Okay. Are you guys all ready? All right. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Siobhan. It takes us to item 7, the adoption of the agenda as presented. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor? Passes 5 plus 1 to 0. It takes us to item 8, student staff community recognition. Superintendent Euster?
This is one of the great times of year that we get to recognize remarkable staff and remarkable students. The first we will start with are some truly remarkable students coming from our high school, truly the epitome of scholars, many of them scholar athletes as well. It is my great pleasure to ask Mr. John Nazar to introduce us to the 2 valedictorians. Yes, we have 2 this year, valedictorians at our high school and our salutatorian.
I don't need 3 for everything else. Thank you.
Thank you, and this is just really a tremendous honor. We had a night about 2 weeks ago where our award winners were recognized and revealed to the entire Half Moon Bay High School community, and it's one that of all of our leaders and all the people recognized, we're extremely proud of them. We have 3 today. Our first one I'm going to talk about is our valedictorian, Kate Nelson. I wonder why she's wearing this shirt. Kate Nelson is a 3-time Central Coast Section all-around champion in gymnastics, and I had the honor of being able to watch her in the CCS championships a few weeks ago. She not only was the all-around champion, but she took first place in, I think it was vault, floor exercise, and beam. So not only she just wins the all-around, she is a champion in the individuals and just a tremendous athlete. She's taken 11 advanced placement classes at Half Moon Bay High School and carries a 4.5 grade point average. Kate will be attending the Ivy League School of Brown University in Providence, Rhode Island in the fall. Kate, we proudly present, and this is from the school board, and I'm just happen to be the voice right now, from the school board, in recognition of outstanding academic achievement, and Half Moon Bay High School, we recognize you by this certificate. Our next one, now I said valedictorian, I think I said valedictorian the first time. We had 2 of them. It was an absolute tie. So the second one I want to bring up is Camila Alvarez Buya. Camila is president of our Big Sisters, Little Sisters club. She was captain of the varsity water polo team, a member of the swim team, taken 11 advanced placement courses at Half Moon Bay High School, and also carries a 4.5 grade point average. Camilla will be attending the University of California at Berkeley in the fall. Camilla, in recognition of outstanding academic achievement by our school board and, of course, by Half Moon Bay High School, this certificate announces you as also our valedictorian for 2016 and 2017, and we're very, very proud of you. And I also want to recognize who all of you just a few minutes ago led us in our pledge, our salutatorian, Siobhan? Siobhan Calhoun. Siobhan was the captain and a vital part of our Central Coast Section Championship girls basketball team. And I do invite you, is this working? All right. I do want to invite you on Sunday, where we're going to be doing, the team is going to do an unveiling of the championship banner. It'll be the first banner hung in our new event center. So we actually ordered two. One will sit in the gym with the other banners we have, and this one will also have a unique one in the event center, which will be recognizing our first team to win a championship there, and which she was a big part of. Not only was she a captain on the championship team, a strong member and leader on the track team, she has taken 9 advanced placement classes at Half Moon Bay High School, a leader in the marching band, carries a 4.4 grade point average, and she'll be attending the Ivy League School of the University of Pennsylvania in the fall, which is in Philadelphia. From our school board, in recognition of your incredible academic achievement, and by Half Moon Bay High School, we give you the certificate.
So this is the recognition of our outstanding students. Congratulations. And I just have to put in there, in case you didn't notice, it was 3 ladies, 3 women that took these highest academic honors. Yeah, girls! Let's do it. So now we'd like to continue on, and I'd like to ask Mr. Corey, this is a great time. We are recognizing employees that are retiring after many years of service to this district.
Thank you, Superintendent Euster. Good evening, members of the Governing Board. It's certainly a wonderful evening anytime we can recognize students, but also our exemplary retirees. And we have invited both classified and certificated staff members this evening to be recognized on behalf of the Governing Board. The first retiree that I'd like to invite up is Deborah Pierce. And certainly when you talk about a smile that lights up the world, I think of Deborah. I'm refer to Deborah as Deb quite frequently, but Deb came to our district in 1998 as a substitute teacher, subsequently hired as a first grade teacher at El Granada on August 23rd, 2000, and then moved on to Cunha. I think there's some Cunha people in the house this evening. Moved on to Cunha as a distinguished science teacher on August 31st, 2004. Deb has completed her 17th year with the Cabrillo Unified School District. Prior, in preparation for this evening's Governing Board recognition, I reviewed personnel files, and the pile was pretty large. We have a number of staff retiring, and it's reminiscing in some capacity, and certainly a wonderful litany of exemplary documents. And it's hard to pick one, but I did pick one recent evaluation for Deb. Deb, you have definitely demonstrated your expertise in pedagogy, instruction, and in developing curriculum within your science class, as well as our computer science courses. I look forward to your application of this expertise and experience in contributing to the science department's transition to the next generation of science standards. So it's certainly a distinguished academic career, if you will, within the Cabrillo and notably at CUNA. But above and beyond that, in your role as a CUTA site rep, we had our conversations and ongoing conversations, and I really like to recognize you for your professionalism. So this evening, we are presenting to you, we have a certificate of appreciation from the Cabrillo Unified School District Governing Board, and we also have for you a recognition from Kevin Mullen's office in recognition of your 17 years of exemplary service. So let's hear it for Deb. You gotta have flowers, right? Congratulations.
Thank you really much. I appreciate it.
And I don't know if you'd like to say anything, or you don't have to, or,
Oh,
you don't have to.
No. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And next up, we're going to invite up Kathy Baldwin. Kathy here? Not here. Okay. Kathy's been a longtime employee in the district as well. She's a special ed instructional aide and a long distinguished career. So we will pass on the certificate of recognition from both the governing board and Kevin Mullen's office. But let's have a loud round of applause for Kathy Baldwin. I don't know who's going to get the bouquet of flowers, but we'll definitely pass it on to her tomorrow. Next up, we would like to invite up Kathy Trulick. You can feel the middle school spirit in the room.
A certain sense of humor.
Absolutely. Kathy was hired in our district on April 16, 1980, as an adult education teacher. Also served as a substitute teacher. Hired as a resource specialist on January 27, 1992 at CUNA, completing her 25th year within the school district. I'm not sure if Kathy remembers my first day in this district in 2006. I think it was a transitional year, perhaps serving as the CUTA president, and we met in the back conference room on my first day or first week, and I was like, oh my gosh. And from that moment, I knew that Kathy conducted herself with the utmost professionalism, not just as a classroom teacher, but as a representative for the teachers in the district, and certainly has continued to impress me. Working with special education students is not an easy task, but certainly one of the most rewarding, and you've done that over the years with smile, with grace, and great diplomacy. But the sense of humor that Kathy, I think recently I complimented Kathy on being able to rise early, put in a long day, and I said, there's a special place for you up there somewhere. And she looked at me and said, not yet, not yet.
That's right, back there.
Absolutely. So heart of gold. On behalf of the governing board, we'd like to present you, Kathy, for your exemplary service, 27 years. And in addition to that, we also have a certificate from Kevin Mullen. So let's hear it again for Kathy.
One Irish Catholic, San Franciscan.
Okay, next up, we'd like to recognize Johanna Gelb. I think Johanna is here. Johanna was hired on August 29, 1991 as a bilingual second, third grade teacher at El Granada. Began teaching at Hatch in August of 1997, completing her 25th year in the district. And certainly the talent to teach within the immersion program, special, unique talent in your contributions are well known, not just at Hatch, but within the district as well. We had conversations as well about retiring and what the ideal date is. Is it at the end of the school year? And we went back and forth, and to her credit, knowing our desire to fill an immersion position in a timely manner, I think the date we initially were talking about, if I may share, was somewhere around October, November. which obviously puts us in a delicate position. And I want to thank you publicly for making that decision to retire in a timely manner so we can find a suitable replacement. So it is with much respect that I present to you a certificate on behalf of the governing board for 26 years of service, and also a certificate.
I just want to say that I hope the immersion program continues to be as wonderful and as giving to the community as it is. So, thank you. Appreciate it.
And next, we would like to recognize Sue Kavanaugh. She's not here this evening, but she's a longtime district employee, and as a matter of fact, a longtime Fairlawn View. 28 years at Fairlawn View Elementary School, and certainly you do not necessarily see that type of longevity. You don't see baseball players, football players staying with one team that long, but certainly within our profession, certainly notable of our recognition for 28 years at Fairlawn View. She is out of state at the moment, but I believe that she's asked Joy to read a statement, and I'd like to provide the opportunity for Joy to do so.
So I was very pleased when I got a call from Sue Kavanaugh yesterday. And she called me and she said that she wanted to make sure that you heard from her too about her appreciation. And I'll share before I share what she asked me to share with you that I was glad that I had the opportunity to give my thanks and gratitude to Sue Kavanaugh in person. She was the type of person on staff who would always tell me like it is. And when you're a leader, you need people like that who you can trust, who will tell you the truth about how they see things. And I always appreciated that about Sue. She also was the teacher for my daughter when my daughter was in 2nd grade. And so I also have that love of her as a parent for having cared for my own child. And in talking to her, she said that she wanted to make sure that the board knew that she thanks you from the bottom of her heart for the opportunities that she's had at Cabrillo. She's appreciated the time that she's had working with a family of teachers and professionals in the district, and that she will always love the Coast Side community. So, thank you.
Okay, and finally, our last recipient this evening, a longtime district employee. Let's bring up Deb Germano. Deb has traveled far to be here this evening. Came down from Oregon to attend the board meeting this evening, and I think spent some time at Cunha as well. And once you meet Deb, you don't forget Deb. Filled with a lot of spirit, a lot of personality. And when I think of middle school, I think of Deb immediately. She was hired in our district on November 1st, 1986 as an instructional aide at Hatch Elementary. Moved to Kings Mountain on November 25th, 1996. Returned to Hatch on September 19th, 1988. Moved to El Granada on August 27th, 2001. And moved to Cunha August 25th, 2003. So 30 years of service in our district, longevity with a lot of grace. Deb works.
You must have a lot of grace.
Deb has worked specifically with Arvin Lyons within our special day class, special education program. And I remember her final day, and I said, oh my gosh, it's almost over. I have to race over there. I think the flowers were a little wilted. I think it was a hot day, but she was surrounded by students. And certainly that's something that I will forever remember, because it's really about the kids and the love and the grace. Oh my God, don't start crying. I'm not starting crying. It's the love and the grace that she's given to the kids day in and day out. It's truly admirable. On behalf of the governing board, we would like to give you this recognition for 30 years of service. And also, in addition to that, we have a certificate for Kevin Mullins. So let's put our hands together for 30 years.
I'd just like to thank Kathy. She was my son's teacher. And Deb, I had her son up Kings Mountain. And Kathy, you know that little place up for you? It's called Oregon.
And we do have some other retirees that unfortunately were not able to join us. We have Lynn Kelly, who has served for 24 years in the district. Christine Prentice, 14 years. Pamela Scaroni, 13 years. And Ed Watkins for 27 years. So they were not able to join us this evening, but let's put our hands together for those retirees as well. And again, on behalf of the governing board, we thank you for your exemplary years of service. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Congratulations to the students, and thank you to the teachers. We appreciate you being here tonight. Moment for... Don't want to hear about the budget? It's really interesting. It's okay. Okay, so that brings us to item 9, comments from the public related to items not on this agenda. I have one green sheet. Are there any other green sheets? This is your opportunity to make comments for items that are not actually on the agenda. Please hand your green sheets to Patty if you have them. I just want to make a note again about this item on the agenda. The board is prohibited by state law under the California Sunshine Act to discuss any matters that are not on the agenda. That is to protect those that might have an interest in discussing those items who did not then know about the discussion that would occur. So we are welcoming of any comments, but please know that we are not allowed to respond to them in any manner. So Veronica Rodriguez, and you have 3 minutes, please. And please, if there are duplicate ideas, please just try and say the same as the other person before you. Welcome.
Good evening, all. I was here last meeting. I was talking on the topic of how shocked I was.
Yeah, hit the red buttons.
That looks a little like, so your light comes on.
There you go.
Okay. Okay. So I was here last meeting talking about how shocked I was that Mr. Gutierrez was leaving the school district and what an enormous loss it was going to be for our students at Cunha and our community in general, and specifically the Latin community here in Half Moon Bay. I wanted to say that, since I was here, it didn't sit well with me that he would leave the school district when his vision was not completed. And he was extremely invested, and he was getting things done. And that was the topic of last meeting, right? To come now, a couple of days later, to find out that now the enormous loss is doubled, tripled, with the loss of now Mr. Dooley, the moving of Mr. Ward. I'm here to talk to you because I'm heartbroken. I'm heartbroken at the enormous loss for our children and for our community. Why and how did we get here? As a school district, a top priority should be to retain administrators that are pushing us to greater goals. How did we get here? I would ask you here today to think about where we stand. We are looking for candidates with successful characteristics, and that will take enormous time and effort on your part and on the whole community, and I acknowledge that. That's an enormous feat. But I would say this effort should have been made to retain, to mentor, and to develop our leaders so that we could take advantage of their experience that they've gained here in our community and use that for our benefit. We had great leaders in these schools that held these characteristics, and I would hope we would take a step back and see what this district could do to assure, to assure our leadership is successful and thrives in the school districts and stays enough time to make their goals reality. This is really important I have 3 boys here. One of them has already gone through Cunha and is now at the high school and is doing great. He's flourishing in the school district. But it worries me, all of this instability, it's not good. And I know sometimes you say, things happen, but I feel that sometimes things happen too often and it becomes a systemic problem. That we get caught up in day-to-day, the way things run and the way things are done and the issues and the things that pressure us to make decisions day in and day out. And I'm just here to kind of say, to put it in your ear, that maybe we need to take a step back and look at the bigger picture, the issues that are pushing these decisions, because it's a cycle that we're in. We're losing amazing people that we should be taking advantage of. And so that's why I'm here today. And thank you for your time. And I appreciate all of your time and effort. You're doing an amazing job. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments. Georgina Mora? I'm sorry, did I pronounce it? Okay. Joy, can you translate? Okay. Do we have a translator? Oh, ella lo hace. Okay, thank you, Joy, I appreciate it.
Yeah. Okay. You're saying that I will translate. We know.
So, yo me siento muy nerviosa con todos los cambios que están yendo, tanto en Cunha como en Hatch.
I feel nervous about the many changes that are happening both at Cunha and at Hatch.
A los directores que se van.
Because of the administrators who are leaving.
Ellos tienen todo controlado, so ahora no sé qué va a pasar con estos cambios.
They had everything under control, and now I don't know what's going to happen with these changes.
Porque es una etapa muy difícil para los niños en ese tiempo, cuando están en Cunha.
Because it's a very difficult stage for children, especially when they're at Cunha.
Y de ahí, pues, vamos a ver qué pasa. Ojalá que tengan una buena decisión. Me gustaría que hubiera otra vez alguien que hablara español.
And we'll see what happens. Hopefully it'll be a good decision, somebody who speaks Spanish.
Okay, estamos en sus manos.
And it's in your hands.
Okay, gracias.
Thank you.
Gracias. Thank you, Joy, as well, for translating.
Sorry, I forgot one major thing. Should I just have one last
Sure.
thing?
Yes.
Sure.
I apologize.
And she brought it up, but that was one of the major things. In looking forward in the new person that we choose, I've been talking to a lot of parents around town, and it's super important that we take into account the need to have a Spanish-speaking person, either vice principal, principal, that is able to communicate with these parents. It makes an enormous difference if you're able to communicate one-on-one with the administrator in your school. And I just wanted to voice that here today. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. Appreciate it. Okay, that brings us to item 10, representative reports. Sean, welcome.
President McCammett and board members. I did a little math before I came to the meeting, and I added up the amount of teaching experience that is moving on from our districts. Over 100 years of teaching experience just in the district, and I'm sure many of them taught at other places too. Susan and Lynn, Johanna, Kathy, Deb, and Kathy Baldwin represents 122 years of teaching in the district, and it's a real clear sign about what a special place this is. People stick around when they get here. But the question is, who's going to fill their spots? And in a time of teaching shortages, this is a really difficult situation, right? It's scary. It's going to be young people filled with energy and the latest pedagogy. It'll be some veterans who are moving on for change. But the changes in the contract have made it a more competitive district, but we're far from done, right? The district and the Teachers Association need to continue to work together to make this place the best possible place for teachers to work. So I look forward to tackling that tough issue with you guys in the future. Thank you for your time.
CSEA? Welcome.
Good evening, board members. Nice to put a face to the name. I'm here tonight to just let you know the latest. I'm Kathy Gray. I'm secretary of the CSCA Chapter 485. And we just wanted to let you know we were able to give away 2 scholarships at Scholarship Night, which was very nice. One was to, excuse me, Jeff Crofton's son, Jack, and the other one was to Karen Rodriguez's son, Justin Rodriguez. So we're very proud of that. Also, we're going to have our last chapter meeting this next Wednesday, which we're happy and excited for. And then also, we will be at the table June 8th, and we're prepared for negotiations. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Okay, it brings us to item 11, reports and information presentations. And our first report is regarding the proposed 2017-2018 Local Control Accountability Plan, which we will then hold a hearing for later in the meeting. Welcome, Joy.
So I would actually like to preface this because several things were kind of out of the norm for what we like to bring to our governing board. We apologize. This is the Local Control Accountability Plan. It is due, as you know, to be under final adoption as our budget adopts later this month. However, this is the draft of it, and I would reemphasize the word draft to you. We literally, to the moment that we dropped this into the board, we're getting changes from the county, and then we got 10 more after we even dropped this into the board agenda. So there are mistakes in it, like spelling errors and grammar and sorry. It's just not normally what we would do, but the combined effort to create this document is hundreds and hundreds of hours, and it's not an excuse for it, but I just apologize. It is what it is. By the time it arrives back for final adoption, the essence of it is correct. Nothing of substantive order is out of order. We are also correcting the slides because, again, as we tried to make the final modifications, as the county was all over us, we inadvertently, one slide looked one way and the other doesn't, and so now we brought them into so that they all look in a similar fashion. So my apologies. The accountability does rest with me eventually to get this through. But we will correct everything. We've given you corrected slides. They already will go up to the public, also in the corrected formats. But it's one of these things, this is so monumental, and the county just isn't letting go of us. And so we are continually in change mode because they keep changing their mind. So I apologize. Joy has done, I do want to give credit to both Joy and Crystal for an absolutely outstanding job of producing this document. Normally you see me stressed out here because I've written the last 2 of the LCAPs. The 2 ladies have done an outstanding job. This is more than, and also the principals that are in this room and the assistant principals. There are more than 100 meetings that take place across this district so that we can get the input from our communities that we need to have in order to make this a meaningful, living document. So the sheer force and the sheer numbers of work that go in here, congratulations to everyone involved. Thank you, principals. Thank you, assistant principals, for the outreach to this community. And thank you, Crystal and Joy, for just an outstanding job.
Thank you. And I will also thank Superintendent Euster, because there comes a point when you're working on a document of this length being revised at the county level and at the stakeholder level as well, that it's hard to see the document anymore. And when Jane started seeing my eyes glaze, she came in and definitely helped in with that. So it's my pleasure today on June 1st to present to you our first complete draft of the Local Control Accountability Plan for the 2017-18 school year. To explain a little bit more, the Local Control Accountability Plan is the district's strategic education plan of resources and support for the success of all students. In particular, we're looking at English language learners, socioeconomic disadvantaged students, as well as foster youth. In this strategic education plan, you'll notice a plan for parent engagement. You'll notice tiered services, including behavior, wellness, and academics, and in different types of measurable outcomes so that we can look and see what our progress is like for our students. We're continuing with the 4 district goals from the 2016-17 LCAP, and those goals include Goal 1, Literacy and English Learner Reclassification, Goal 2, College and Career Readiness, Goal 3, Parent Engagement, as well as Goal 4, which is Safety and School Climate. The process that we've used this year is to, number one, last June, approve the current plan that we have. So it was approved at a board meeting last June. And then starting in the fall, we started to implement, and actually last summer with summer school services already, we began implementing the actions and services of that plan. We provided annual updates to the board and site-based leadership. The board meeting dates, I believe, were in December, January, and February when we did our annual updates. In February and March, we started our stakeholder input groups. And those were meetings where we embedded conversations about our strategic education plan within our PTO meetings, our site-based ELAC meetings, and then also held district-level meetings for CUTA, CSEA, as well as other stakeholder groups at the district level. After we collected all of our input in about mid-May, we delved deeply into the revision of our goals, actions, and services, and we started turning in drafts of our sections to the county at that time. And through that revision process, they would make some small and some very big revisions of our ideas so that it could take the form that it has for what we're offering to today for a review, which is a review of our complete 2017-18 plan. So in starting, the way that this presentation is organized is that we want to share with you for each goal the community input, followed by the actions and services that we're taking for each goal, and then the metrics of how we actually are going to be measuring the success for each of those. In looking at Goal 1, Literacy and English Learner Reclassification, in gathering the input from our community, there were some similar themes that went through. The importance of reading intervention, the value of early reclassification, the request for professional development and resources for English language development, smaller class sizes, and technology-enhanced learning. These are broad strokes that you can see, and as we pulled them and those ideas together, we would look at what our plan was from last year and see how can we tweak it so that we could amplify the values of our community and still create a plan that is concise and that we can look at through measurable outcomes. So the actions that we formulated for the English Learner Reclassification and Literacy Goal, Goal 1, was to continue looking at our frequent formative student assessments, class size reduction in TK through grade 3, to make sure that we're emphasizing the key literacy time frame for students when they're learning to read. Continuing with elementary reading intervention, looking at different forms of technology-enhanced reading intervention for all grades. And this is a little bit new because we've had aspects of technology-enhanced reading intervention in the past, but this is looking at that advanced technology on a grander scale for the entire district. We're also going to be continuing with our daily English language development and our director of categorical programs who's helping to support English learners across the district as well as many of our families. Another piece is looking more closely at our extended day and summer programs to see how we can create a district-wide extended day program because at this time the programs are they're more site-based. In looking at our metrics for Goal 1, we're keeping many of the same metrics from last year with some small changes. We're looking at the CASP test, the California Assessment of Student Performance and Progress in English Language Arts, our Fontes-Pinnell reading assessments, which are for the elementary schools, our CELT test, which is the California English Language Development Test, and our reclassification rate. All of those are types of assessments that we've used in the past. One of the changes is that instead of looking at these assessments for only all students, we're looking more specifically at subgroups. So that's one of the shifts that we've made this year in the way that our metrics look. Another shift you'll notice is the percent of reclassified students in grades 5, 8, and 11. The reason why we're looking at this now is that the reclassification rate really changes every year based on the number of English learners and the number of reclassified students. But it fluctuates, and there isn't we wanted to look at something that would create more anchored information. So instead, we're looking at our percent of reclassified students in 5, 8, and 11, looking at the percent of students who started off in kindergarten as English learners, and then seeing how many of those students are getting reclassified. And I think that will give us a truer understanding of our progress through time rather than the current use of the reclassification rate. Moving on to goal 2, which is focused on college and career readiness. In our community input sessions, we heard some similar themes, including really wanting highly qualified faculty and staff, making sure that we continued with our AVID programs, the advancement via individual determination, continued career technical pathways and access to A through G requirements. And this was interesting in community input because for some people in the community, they really didn't value the A through G requirements as much, or courses, as much as they really wanted to have other avenues for students who weren't planning on attending a UC or CSU. And that's where we heard both of those being equally important to our community. We also heard a lot about wanting to improve student engagement through extracurricular activities and mentors. And underlying that is this idea about making sure that there's motivating and engaging ways that students can be involved with school, but also with people at school. And the final piece that we heard repeatedly was about the call for math intervention. In looking at our actions, we are going to continue with hiring and retaining qualified staff, providing professional development for the staff that we are able to hire and through that professional development also retain. Looking at Common Core specialist teachers and Common Core math curriculum to support learning in the classrooms. Now, this is where you're going to see our idea around math intervention. We heard the call for math intervention. One of the pieces about that is also making sure that we have strong foundational math curriculum, and from that foundational math curriculum that we're going to be adopting and you will be seeing over in the next year, we're going to be able to then, on top of that, consider types of interventions after we develop the foundation. We are going to be continuing with AVID, and then also looking at different types of opportunities for using that same concept of technology-enhanced credit recovery, and then allowing students to have access to different A through G courses as well. And then, as we talked about before, looking at the continuation and expansion of early college and career technical pathways to give students access to different types of opportunities that aren't only UC, CSU avenues. Similar to the metrics for Goal 1, we used many of the same metrics from our last LCAP, including the early assessment program that we also call it EAP, the CASP, this time focusing on mathematics, A through G course requirement completion at the high school, and then also looking at the participation in AVID. A couple of things that we're adding are looking at the availability of participation of college credit courses not only counted as AP, but counted as both AP and early college, because we really want to recognize that we're trying to develop different types of avenues and patterns, and we don't want to overemphasize AP over early college. So we're putting them both in looking at how we look at the availability and participation in these types of courses that give students that access to college credit. The other metric that we have that's new is the percentage of AVID college applicants, which we really want to continue to explore and see as our AVID program continues to develop through time. Our next goal is focused on parent engagement, and our community input meetings wanted to express how much they valued the communication and outreach, especially for Spanish-speaking families. And also what we heard was this desire to find new ways to motivate and engage families. And that's a challenging one, because I think what we heard at an earlier presentation was that parents are often busy, and we need to continue to think about what are the ways that we're going to engage families, and also recognize what parent engagement is, aside from just looking at it as parent time on school property. We're going to continue using technology as a tool for communication, and then more explicitly look at how we provide parent workshops throughout the year that are tailored to the needs of each of the school sites. Actually, I'm moving into actions right now, but the other piece was about community input, was wanting improved parent, teacher, student, and counselor communication. So in looking at the actions for parent engagement, we are going to be continuing the services of having community liaisons at each site, the oral interpretation and written translation services across the district, expanding our use of digital communication, and as I had mentioned on the prior slide, really tailoring the parent education meetings that we have. And then again, continuing with our district-wide climate survey. Yes, in the liaisons, that was the... Oh, and then thank you for professional development for the liaisons as well. Superintendent Jane Euster is a wonderful partner in this work. So in looking at the metrics for parent engagement, one of our new metrics is looking at our parent participation in site-based decision-making committees. So last year we were looking at how many parents went to different school events, and we decided we really want to see how parents are really engaged in decision-making. So we're looking at the participation, especially of underrepresented families in our decision-making bodies, including ELAC and School Site Council, and the Superintendent PAC meet as well. Continued participation in the climate survey is one of our metrics, and these next two are part of our climate survey, which is the parent engagement section and barriers to engagement. And we're going to be using those scores as another way of us analyzing how parents continue to perceive the barriers to engagement in schools, as well as how they perceive themselves as having opportunities for engagement. And we are also adding the metric of looking at the number of parent outreach events at each site. In looking at Goal 4, we're going to be focusing on safety and school climate as our focus, and the community input that we heard was a desire for expanded wellness services, after-school enrichment and intervention options, continued positive behavior interventions and supports for at-risk students through early intervention, and then data meetings to identify at-risk students and faster access to services. In taking that information, we brainstormed for different actions and how we would change them or alter them. And in safety and school climate, I will include that there are the maintenance of school facilities here, which is one of the basic needs that we need to provide for the district. So that's one of our actions that's included. The continuation of positive behavior interventions and supports, which includes on-site coaching, continuation of our truancy and attendance protocols, as well as expanding our wellness services, which we heard an overwhelming desire from the community. Academic counseling and continued transportation for at-risk students. One of the pieces here that is new is looking at our special education basic courses that are going to be provided at the high school level in order to help support students in meeting graduation requirements. And finally, looking at the metrics for safety and school climate. In looking at our compliance, we look at the Williams Act compliance, attendance rate, chronic absenteeism, truancy, suspension and expulsion rates, dropout rates, and graduation rates. While we're looking now at subgroups, within this we're going to be looking at the dropout rates and graduation rates also in cohort groups, or that is subgroups of students. With suspension and expulsion rates, it is difficult to do that because there are so few students, but we are starting to look at different subgroups for our metrics in safety and school climate as well. One of the other pieces that I will add to our metrics is that we're including also from our panorama survey the school climate metric and then the safety metric as well, which is similar to our parent engagement and barriers to engagement metric that we're looking at for Goal 3. And that is the overview of our LCAP. For more information, you can see the extensive document within the board packet. Are there any questions?
Yeah,
Yeah, so just real quick to clarify for the board, this is the presentation and this is for questions of Joy. We then have a later item in the agenda, which is the public hearing and discussion of the outcome. So just for clarification, this is for questions of Joy.
I have a couple questions, just to understand a little bit more detail what some of these terms refer to. Learning continuously. Under Goal 1, we have a little bit description of the extended day and summer programs. What does the extended day look like, or what would it look like?
So currently, one of the challenges about creating a district extended day plan is that we have a lot of after-school programming or extended day programming throughout the district that's site-funded. So the first goal that we have for next year is actually to do a full evaluation of what all the programs are, who's being served, what are their metrics, what are their funding sources, and then find out of all of those, is there something where, for example, there's a grant that we can utilize for another site to help create a more robust system. So I can tell you a little bit about what some of the current services are, but I think that our goal next year is to really do a larger delve into what all of them are.
Similar, I think. Yeah, summer school, that makes sense.
Oh, thank you.
I had one more question, somewhat definitional. Oh, for Goal 2, you mentioned the Common Core specialist teachers. What would what's their role, or what would their role be?
So currently, we have teachers on special assignment who are released from the classroom. At elementary, Lynn Kelly is one of those teachers. And then we have teachers who are released for sections at Cunha. And this year, the high school was trying out Common Core specialist teachers, in which they weren't released time, but they had a stipend, and then they did Common Core work outside of the classroom time. And so with using that model from the high school that we've heard really great things from the teachers as well as the administrators at the high school, we wanted to try that model out at the other school sites, which allows for a greater number of specialists throughout the district also.
And what kind of work would they do? Like, what kind of Common Core work would they do?
So a lot of the work would be dependent on what their area of specialty is. So for example, if for math teachers, or for the math specialists, they would focus mostly on math, and those that are working on English language arts, for example, would focus more on English language arts. But I think the benefit of having multiple people versus one person is then they can actually collaborate across the different areas.
That makes sense. Okay, good. Thank you.
I have a couple.
Thanks. One of the questions I had is, you talk about motivating parents versus engaging parents. Could you differentiate? I'm curious about motivating
Yeah.
parents, what you're looking for there.
Well, that was actually a word that I heard often coming from parents who were saying that the parents who were at the table were ones who were already engaged. And what they were saying is we need to find ways to motivate the parents who aren't here right now. So how do we motivate them? And to speak honestly, some of them spoke about doing punishment fines for other parents, and I thought, I don't think we can really do that, so let's come up with some other ways to motivate parents. So we talked about things like, okay, well, what about ice cream socials? What about, providing more access? So engagement can be many things, but I think the underlying reasons for why people come together is another, and I think that what I'm hearing from parents is that creating a meeting, even at a convenient time, may not be enough motivation. And how can we create more pressure for our parent colleagues to actually join us in being here today?
Breaking down barriers is a
Yes.
That's a noble goal, and I think it would be great if it can be organic through those parents who are at the table, to find that way to tell them why they need to be there, because that's much more effective than us trying to convince them, I think, if to the extent that that's possible. One other question is about site liaisons. Is the primary goal of a site liaison to participate in translation kind of tasks, or are they trained and skilled in other things like social emotional kind of things? So are they doing more than just helping people that might have a language barrier, but are they there for everybody and are able to serve everybody as far as not taking care of things, but fielding them? Okay, so-and-so can take care of this, I want you to, this kind of thing.
So I think that the liaisons play an integral role at every single school site, and that one of their unique roles is translation, but they also are district school employees, and all of us who work in schools do that type of work of really getting to know the families, getting to know what kids' sweet spots are, or where are their touch points where they need a little bit more help. And so those liaisons can work in that capacity with those individual students. And I think that the power of translation isn't just the power of translating words, it's also helping to bridge between the way that school functions and the way that families understand schools. So that's a huge piece of the work that liaisons do. When they plan meetings, they do targeted meetings based on what they're hearing from the community. With that said, I think all of us need more professional development in the work that we do. And one of the things that we've heard from families is that we want more professional development specifically around outreach and how can liaisons take their role to another level. So that is something that within the plan we are looking at how to improve as well.
Thank you. One other question is, I know that our job, if you will, as a K-12 district is to get kids graduated and on a trajectory somewhere. Do we ever gather any data to find out how they do after that? Is it anything, is it none of our business, or is it something that we think about?
That's a great question. I think that right now, one of the things, and I know you're talking about the upper end, I think that we're continuing to extend out further every year. And part of the way that we're able to do that is through partnerships that we have. So we're able to extend further down into preschool through our partnerships with preschool districts and the Big Lift. And then we're able to extend upward into the college level by tracking students, for example, who are participating in AVID. So we have a small group that we're tracking instead of tracking all of our graduates at once. So starting with tracking our AVID students and seeing where they're going. And then also with our relationship that's developing with the community college, I think it starts to open up avenues for us to develop that ability.
I agree, and I applaud any effort towards that direction. I think AVID is such a wonderful way of bringing that engagement out of the kids, so they really feel they belong, and there's a reason, and they're worthy of learning and developing themselves. And it seems like AVID itself should be something almost invisible. It should be inherent in every core class, everything that goes on, so that it's already there. It should be in there already, not an add-on program. And I hope that we can make that like that at some point in time, because it has, we heard the testimony at the previous meeting of the kids in the program, and it's clearly working for them, as it should. And certainly some kids don't need that. They already have it either but it should be intrinsic to everything going on in the classroom, that kids, as they start in the district, are always looking at that as that's the prize up there, and it's for you as well as it is for anybody else. And this is how you get there.
And one of the details of our goals this year in AVID is to actually explore expanding AVID into elementary. So next year is an exploration year with looking at possible implementation the following year. I'm sorry, he's speaking.
Well, just, because I think your question is a great question, but what we try to do, I know at Cunha, but also at the high school, is do professional development where the AVID techniques are taught to all of our teachers. So whether it's Cornell note-taking, Socratic seminars, so it's not just isolated to one band. But so I really look at, like you do, the pervasive culture around the AVID techniques, but we also will have that streamlined avenue of intensity around the specific band of students. I think the dual is the way to, I think, most effectively do it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Nazar. We have a great team, really.
The team is great, no question. On goal 4, can you expand a bit on after-school enrichment and intervention options? Seems, I'm interested in why those are grouped together. What audience are we trying to serve? Any thoughts initially shared on that request?
Regarding community input on the community.
Right,
input.
what kind of enrichment are we looking for? What kind of interventions options? We have lots of intervention, so what's the next step relative to that request?
So thank you for asking that question, because I think one of the things I really appreciated about these community input meetings was hearing the details about what people really mean behind all of these. And one of the things that I heard about after-school enrichment and intervention is that there is this piece about intervention. Help my kids with homework. Help my kids with getting better at reading. Help my kids with math. But the other piece is, similar to the question about motivation for parents, how do we engage kids so that they love school? Because it's not enough to be good at reading. It's not enough to be good at math. It's important for them to have mentors. It's important for them to have love of learning. It's important for them to have opportunities to see themselves in school. And that piece about enrichment is about how do we get our students engaged, whether it's after-school sports or music or STEM or whatever it is, because we want to give them those opportunities. And that was what I heard from the families.
Thank you.
Do you have another question?
No.
Any questions? I just had one question regarding one of the things I love about the LCAPs, and let me just preface this, is that we're allowed to use data from our own decisions, formative assessments from the beginning of the year to the end, stuff that makes sense for what the goals that we've developed, and I really appreciate that. We can switch them, we can say, hey, parent engagement is number of parents who attended, and now we're going to look at it in a different way because this is going to be more effective, and I think that's wonderful. Yet there is still in all of this, there's the CAST data, and I really appreciated in the report on the current year that when we had to use CAST data from 8th grade to compare it to the next 8th grade, which for me always feels like apples and oranges because they're different kids and it was a different test and it was taken on a different time, and there were different moods and all of those things that factor into how well kids do on tests. I really appreciated when you would point out this is how this cohort did the previous year on the CAST, and I just want to encourage us as much as possible in the LCAP and asking, I guess, if there's flexibility, because I know that sometimes we're required to use those CAST scores, but at any point where there is flexibility, I think comparing year-to-year cohorts just makes so much more sense than comparing 8th grade to 8th grade with a different set of students. So I just wanted to put that in for my 2 cents. And I'm also always curious, and I ask teachers when I go to sites, how is this test? Does it work? Does it help you? Is it information that is really useful? Because I think that that's really important to know as well.
Thank you.
I'm going to ask one more question. For goal 4, looking at the metrics, most of these appear to be fairly late-stage metrics. Like by the time you drop out, it's kind of like, okay, good to know. How can we prevent that? Are there any early indicator metrics you might look at, like principal office referral rates, or like something that happens before kids start like being chronically absent or dropping out? Good.
Here comes the team. So there are early stage metrics on that. We start watching our attendance rates. We're not waiting till, you don't wait till there's like 20 absences before you start being concerned. Teachers also are an outstanding source for us, kids who are disengaging from us. That's why also principals everybody's alert to watching kids as they begin to disengage from us. One of the nice things about Cabrillo being a K-12, it's very hard for a kid to get lost here. We know them, and we see them develop over time. And so, yes, metrics are on behavioral referrals in the elementaries. So they're on behavioral referrals all the way through. So there's a lot of early stage metric. Some of I should give commentary to the new dashboard is from the state. You haven't seen us report to you on it yet because it's still in field test mode. However, we were under heavy pressure to start putting a field test, scientifically not valid yet, as a primary measure of the effectiveness of our plan. And we did remind the county and the state, I've testified on both, that one, we're not doing anything until it comes off field test and we know something's valid. Two, this is a local control, and so local measures were supposed to be encouraged. I understand we need to put the standardized CASP measures in. I have no objection to this. We have the suspensions and those things that you see, those are state required metrics in place, fine, no problem. But you will not see us referring very often. When you see reference to reds and blues in our thing, it's because we had to, not because we were standing very strong in the arguments that we have very strong local measures. We have suspension rates and all the fluctuation rates, which our community should be judging us against and judging our progress against. And the data that they're looking at now on the first dashboard is 2 years old, frankly. And so there's, really, we're not going to wait 2 years before we take action. We're taking it every single year. And so the metrics we bring to you are current metrics, so that we can truly stay well assessed of our progress and what we're doing. And so we continue to voice our argument to the state and to the county that until that, and the dashboard is almost, we'll bring it to you, but it's almost incomprehensible. It's got colors, blues and greens and yellows and pinks, and I don't even know what it means. Ours is just, look at our absolute numbers. This is our suspension rate, this is our graduation rate. These are absolutes, and there's no getting around them. And this is what you should be judging us by, is the college and career readiness of our students, their social emotional well-being. And so you see us loading metrics that enable us to do that.
Okay, any more questions? And again, we will have an opportunity to hold a public hearing. If there's anyone in the audience who would like to make a comment on it, that's your opportunity, and we will have time for discussion as well. Okay, takes us to our next
Thank you.
report presentation. Thank you, Joy.
So it is time now for our budget presentation, and you can see Crystal is actually back up out. She's been locked in the room getting these budgets ready. It's a phenomenal task, and we have a minor change in presentation, which you now have in front of you, and once again, we will modify to go forward. But as with all of these things, this data keeps, and especially the governor, keeps deciding what he is and isn't going to give to us right down to the last minute. So, Crystal?
Good evening. I kind of feel that, the LCAP has really brought the curriculum side and the finance side together within school districts to really work on the same team. But I feel like the curriculum people at the state level have been talking a little too much with my finance people at the state level because they want us to use numbers and data that's 2 years old. So let's keep that in mind as we go through tonight's budget presentation. So again, this is a report presentation on the 17-18 district budget. Budget happens so early prior to the upcoming fiscal. It's a time that I think about of like these clouds floating in the air, which are ideas that Superintendent Euster is asking me to cost down and try to capture. And so it's a matter of pulling them all down and trying to stick them in and then seeing where we end up. It's my least favorite financial report, I must say. So again, this is a common slide that you do see of what our financial reports are throughout the year, how we operate in multiple fiscal years at one time. So while we are doing the adopted budget, we are doing for 17-18, we are also doing the estimated actuals for 16-17. So the significant changes around the state start with a lowered revenue expectation for 16-17. California relies on the top 1% for the tax revenue. So because of their reliance on this top 1% and how that top 1% revenue can be volatile at times, it definitely has a direct effect on how school districts are funded. In this case, actually lowering the revenue expectations for 16-17. They are higher revenue projections for 17-18. We're going to look at some proposed federal cuts. With what's going on in Washington and the discussion there, right now it's very superficial discussion, although scary to think about. Some of the cuts that are on the table are to stop the subsidizing of interest for student loans. And although that may not have a direct effect on us, as it affects the states, which affects, our communities, it does dwindle down into the school districts. There is also sufficient cuts projected to Medicaid, which of course affects our special need children a lot, along with our low-income students, which would then affect the services that we're able to provide them. Often during the year, I'm asked by principals and conversations through all of our stakeholders about double dipping. How do we supplement and not supplant? And these federal tax cuts really feel like a double dipping of cuts, because if you cut Medicaid, you're cutting these services, but then we'll also be getting cuts to the title funds, which also serve the same, same kids. So it really feels like a double dipping. It is extremely too early for us to know what the federal cuts will do to the district, although during May they were supposed to be coming up with plans. So it's really too early to know what the federal is going to have its effects on us. The proposed deferral is eliminated, or is it? We will definitely talk about that a little bit later. The forecasting of a mild recession in 18-19 has been removed, and the growth is now projected for the next 4 years. So that's very different than what it was at second interim that I reported to you a little over 2 months ago. The LCFF pace of implementation still varies by state scenarios. At this time, we are still on target to be fully funded at 07-08 levels in 2021. So, not to go back in time, but I definitely think it's important that we look at how many changes have actually occurred in such a short amount of time. Bless you. At second interim, there was a reduction in the general fund tax revenue. So that they were kind of noticing was happening again. That's definitely the high level of that top 1% that California depends on their tax revenue. The CALS per increase was of 1%. It actually went down, it's just probably like 0.25%. So that actually is not in the budget. This information comes out literally hours before the packet is due to Patty. No funding to close the LCFF gap, so we were supposed to be flat funded for this year. That is not true. The deferrals are back at second interim. They are now gone for 17-18 budget. And at second interim, which was based off of the January budget, the one-time funds of $48 per ADA, which is what we were getting. So here's a little snapshot of what the one-time funds have looked like over the years. So we went from 67 all the way up to 529. That's definitely a strong year for districts and their one-time money. And so we went from January of $48 to 17-18 in May revise of $170, which kind of got me excited. It's more money. We all know I like more money. However, we'll get to the however part soon. So these are the planning factors that go into the budget. So what I've given you is what the current planning factors are as of May revise for 17-18. So we have a COLA of 1.56, 2.15 for 18-19, and 19-20 is 2.35. What I'd like to draw your attention to is that for 17-18 at first interim it was 1.1, and then at second interim it was 1.4, and then now it's 1.5. And these numbers have drastically changed. For 18-19, they went from 2.42 to 2.40 to now at 2.15. And even with the PERS employer rates, which we've really seemed to be static since they, gave districts the level of increases that we'll be experiencing over the next 5 to 7 years several years ago. But in 17-18, at first interim, we saw this fluctuation. We went from 15.5 to 15.8 to now settling down at 15.531. And those 0.531s, I know sometimes they seem redundant, but they are very important when we're calculating to actually see how much this is going to cost the district. The lotteries remain flat and consistent. And then we revisit that one-time discretionary fund of 170. So at May revise, the governor said, we have this extra money. We're going to give it to districts, $170, it's up from $48, one-time funds. It's really exciting news, except none of it was true. They're actually going to give it to us, if it's available, in May of 2019. So that's 11 months after this whole budget cycle. The reason for doing this is they, again, it's a bait and switch. It's really flat, it's a bait and switch. They had deferrals on the table, and districts were barking at the deferrals on the table because we thought we got rid of deferrals, right? Got the state to pass, an extension of Prop 30. We got more money to school districts, so we're going to pull the deferrals back. So since we pulled the deferrals back, we're still unsure about our revenue and this one-time discretionary funding that we think we may have, but we're not sure we're going to have it, so now we're going to just defer that. The problem is, which I think is really important, is I have to operate under the California School Accounting Manual. That's the rules that govern how I do accounting within school business. And Procedure 101 is, in order for me to recognize the revenue, it must be measurable and available to pay for expenditures within the current period. Governmental accounting typically defines available as received within 90 days of year end. So this is not even, his deferral of 170 in May of 2019 doesn't even go with the guidelines that legally we have to comply with. So I cannot even account for that $170 is basically what that is. And it very well could go away. I also think what's interesting is that in May of 2019, we will have a new governor, and half of the legislation will be different. So, as school services like to put, I hope that the new governor finds in the file cabinet that IOU to school districts for $170. So our LCFF funding, you can note that, yes?
A question on the LCFF gap funding that dips down in the 2017-18. I'm just looking at that line item.
So the gap funding percentage, it obviously, like, if you just look at those numbers across the board, it's very confusing, right? Because in 2021, we're supposed to be fully funded. But what that gap funding percentage is the amount that the state is configuring for school districts to get to the target. So it's moving. So it doesn't take 100% over 10 years and then divide it into 10%, each year. It's a constant moving percentage. So what that tells me is that 43.97, when you plug it into the formula, equates to a revenue dollar. That's what that is. So in actuality, in 15-16, which I don't have the numbers for, the funding gap was still in the 50s, but that was our highest year to receive revenue as far as reaching our target. So that doesn't play too much into what we actually get. So as far as the LCFF funding goes, and this kind of gives you a little bit better of a picture, you can see in 13-14, this is, that's where we flipped. So this part up at the top, it's like a pale pink, which is the excess property taxes. So anytime that we have excess property taxes, that's when you're classified as basic aid. So right now, the projections do not show, any excess, but I can tell you that the county has spoken to me and told me to be on the lookout, because if funding remains stable or we lose funding, we do risk on flipping back. And they addressed our cash situation when we flipped forward, but they're not really sure how to address the situation if they flip back. San Mateo County has the most districts in any county in California that have flipped and have a chance of flipping back. I do think we'll be okay, but it's definitely something that wasn't on the radar before that now is on the radar. And then here's a snapshot of the MYP. So it gives you an outlook on 3 years. Total revenues for 17-18 are projected at about $35 million, with expenditures exceeding at $36 million. So we're definitely in that deficit spending, along with all of our neighboring districts within San Mateo. So districts across the state are definitely having to tap into their reserves, and you will see the increase in deficit spending. The Department of Finance is okay with this. They think that it's okay for districts to spend down their reserves, especially until we get that one-time money later. But if you were to budget for that and spend down the reserves in hopes to get that money, and then you don't get it, and then the state has flat funding, then your reserves disappear far faster, right? Because as I've mentioned before, what that ending fund balance is doesn't cover a payroll.
I think Ann Campbell said that 22 out of 27 districts in San Mateo County are deficit spending.
And what the current year does not include, as well as we have not gone to the table for CSEA for negotiations. That is coming up, so there is nothing in there as far as that goes, or for unrepresented. So also a part of the budget cycle is to look at estimated actuals. So it's a snapshot. You can take the snapshot either you can pick a date, like May 1st, or I tend to use second interim because it's the last time I brought the budget to you as far as reporting purposes, but then I also monitor it actuals through April 30th. So total fund for revenues are estimated at just under $36 million. For 17-18, right now we're projected at $35,397,000. So there's a difference of about $600,000, which is mostly due to one-time money. But also what's important to note in here is that we pull out all those PTO and boosters and foundation revenues until we get those commitment letters. So those will go back in at first interim. So that revenue will go up a little bit. But along with what's pulled out is also pulled out on the expenditure side. So when you look at these expenditures and compare them from estimated actuals time to up and coming budget year, we see that increase, right? So we look at a total fund of about $35.5 million. And right now for 17-18, actually, I was going to say I like that number better. We're at about $36,611. So there's definitely an increase in expenditures, but that's to be expected with the increase of STRS and PERS and just employment costs to districts, just the standard cost of doing business. And then in closing thoughts, again, it's essential for us to remember that when LCFF is fully implemented, the base grant funding will be equalized across all districts, which means we will get the same funding that a district in the Central Valley gets. And the only thing that will be different for us will be the amount of supplemental funding we get, and that's based off of our unduplicated percentage, which is a lot of the services that we talk about in the LCAP. What's important to remember too is that to get concentration money, that's 55%. And, I often like to engage, whether it be Jerry Hill's office or Mullen or anybody in the state that will listen to me, that what is the difference of educating 55% versus 50% versus 46. Like, where did that number come from? So they haven't really addressed that yet. I can tell you that if the state starts cutting, the districts that will feel it most will actually be the districts with the higher unduplicated count. So because we hover around 46, that may be a good thing for us. Additional funding will be based solely on COLA, and that's a state COLA. And all of these factors continue to change throughout the year, as you can see on that slide that I presented before, how they just change over a period of 4 to 5 months. So healthy reserves are an essential piece of our safety equipment. Any questions?
Real quick, can you just clarify that last bit? So they might change it so they don't have a concentration camp funds anymore, so they just supplemental is the only thing? Or?
No, there's still 3 parts. There's the base, and then the supplemental and the concentration. But the concentration, yeah, I know. Well, I know.
Any questions? Any questions from the board on the budget? Okay, and again, this will be a matter of public hearing and discussion very soon. That takes us to item, thank you, Crystal. Takes us to item 12, discussion items. 12A, discuss first reading on the proposed English and Spanish language arts textbook adoption at Hatch Elementary School. Joy? Is there a presentation? There's a presentation.
Yeah.
Hello again. Joy Dardanelle, Assistant Superintendent of Curriculum Instruction. It's my pleasure to present to you the Wonders and Maravillas adoption. And I have the text, some of the textbooks to share with you tonight, and I'll pass that around. And I will tell you a little bit about it. This one is in English. This is Literature Anthology for first grade, first book, first unit, first grade, Literature Anthology. And this is the Spanish version of the Maravillas first grade, first unit. And I'm going to pass it around as I do my presentation so that you can look at it. More materials are available in the back for first grade also. I chose first grade for a reason. One is that we had the materials in English and Spanish so that you could see both of them next to each other, but also because the first grade texts for the first units are very light so that you can look at it and actually look at both open at the same time. I will just point out as you do look at it that if you look at the table of contents, you'll see that there are some similar stories between the two, but that there are also different ones. The fiction stories are actually original pieces, whereas the nonfiction are, some of them are translated. So to give you a little bit of background, the Common Core Standards for English Language Arts were adopted in 2010. It's 2017 now. The state adopted the instructional materials in 2015. So part of what takes the state that long to actually adopt the instructional materials is that after the state standards are adopted, they work on their framework, which takes a couple of years. They get feedback, and then from their framework, they send that to publishers who then make adjustments to their materials. There was a time period where there were bridge materials that took old materials and added Common Core elements to them, and the actual new, fully Common Core ready instructional materials were adopted in 2015. With that, our district jumped on the bandwagon in 2015-16 school year to start reviewing possible programs. And particularly for Hatch Elementary School, we wanted to find a language arts program that had an English component and a Spanish component and an English language development component. In looking at all the programs that were available at the state level that had been adopted, there were 2 programs that fit that description, and the Wonders Maravillas one was the one that in the spring of 2016 was selected to be piloted at the school. At that same time too, while I'm not presenting the other materials, Hatch was part of a full school district process of looking at piloting. So other schools in the district also looked at materials, and at El Granada and Fairlawn View, they piloted English language development materials through English 3D, and then also piloted the Wonders English language development materials for kindergarten through 3rd grade. For their regular English language arts sections at the other schools, including Kings Mountain, Fairlawn View, and El Granada, they're sticking with the Teachers College Reading and Writing Workshop model. So in 2016, after the selection of pilot materials across the district, particularly Hatch chose Maravillas and Wonders to implement across their school. So in fall of 2016, we began the training with the pilot materials, and it was quite an event as the materials came into the site in the many boxes that it came into. And the teachers were moving into new buildings as well as having new materials that they can use with their students. In winter of 2017, the pilot materials were implemented in the classroom for a formal pilot. The way that we distinguish between a pilot and an exploratory use of materials is that prior to professional development, the teachers were able to use the materials, but during the pilot phase of 6 weeks, we wanted the teachers to start a unit and really implement it with fidelity, and then evaluate the program based on that 1 6-week experience. So in February, all the teachers participated in the evaluation of the program. And that brings us to where we are today at June 1st, which is recommending to the board the final results of the surveys and discussions that we've had with the staff and the adoption committee for a recommendation to you today, and then also looking at the June 22nd board meeting for requesting your board approval. A couple of benefits, as you'll see in looking at the books, and this is only the literature anthology piece, there's also other components of the series that you can see available in the back, is that it is a parallel program of English and Spanish. What I appreciate about it is that while it's parallel, it's not the same thing. It's not a translation of the same story in English and Spanish all the time, but that there is literature that was actually written originally in Spanish that's included in the Maravillas sections, which is very important for students who are learning Spanish. There's also the English language development component that is available as part of Wonders, and then it can complement the Maravillas section. It also has leveled readers and high interest books that are included within the program. A couple of teachers' comments that we collected during the evaluation I brought to you today because I just appreciated them so much. This program provides the tools for teachers to make the language accessible to all their students. And the high interest content is extremely engaging and motivating. The students have built so much confidence through the multitude of opportunities to speak and discuss. So I think that things that are high interest, one is that there's engaging pictures to it for little kids. They really like having those high interest pictures, that the content is really interesting. So for example, with nonfiction, we really want to, a lot of students actually really like nonfiction. They like informational texts, but one of the challenges with that is that, especially when I used to teach 4th grade, the best informational texts we had were these DK books. They were white with a DK sign on the side. There were pictures of things with really intense captions. And while the students love the content, ancient Rome, for example, they could not access the language, and they were able to access the pictures. So with the type of materials that they have, they're able to access the content as well as using the pictures to help them with context clues, but it's actually written at their level, and it's on a variety of topics that could be interesting for the variety of types of students that we have. And so I have come to the question slide, but before I go on to that, I do want to point out a little bit more about why we particularly chose this as an adoption for Hatch and not specifically as an adoption for the entire school district. And the Hatch teachers have requested through time that they wanted to have more language supports for their students in Spanish. And what they really wanted was an anthology or something that provided a teacher's edition also in Spanish to help create that well-rounded language basis for them as teachers, but also for the students. And with that program at the Spanish immersion side of the house at Hatch, we wanted to also give an opportunity for the school as a whole to use the parallel program in English so that the whole school would come together under one program versus having the English side necessarily following the rest of the school district, but not having people within their same school to be collaborating with around reading and writing workshop. And so in talking to the staff, this is the recommendation that we're bringing to the board today.
So any questions, discussion?
I have one question, just to clarify. You said that the books would be used for kids learning Spanish. Did you mean that?
So the Spanish language arts books would be for students who are learning Spanish.
Right, the English only kids would not have Spanish
No,
books.
they would not. Thank you.
Two questions. And the duals have both. The immersions have both. So, two questions. One, do you see any drawbacks to this set of materials?
There is nothing that's perfect. So I think that what I think is more important than even the materials we have is how we support teachers in the implementation of those materials, but also in understanding how do we adjust to each individual child. So I think that the drawbacks in instruction are not with the materials themselves necessarily, but on how we help support teachers so that they're able to support students on an individual, as much as possible basis.
Yeah, and kind of related to that, I guess my question is, with this as being the anchor for their language arts learning, are there opportunities for the teachers to have flexibility in how they use these materials to bring in what they're doing for the children in other disciplines like social studies or science? Like if they're reading, there's some cool stuff in there like about plants. Like if they're doing that, can they then align their science unit with when they're reading the plant chapter there so that they're like doing the plant sunflower growing or whatever kind of cool fun stuff they could do?
So one of the things that California and all of the books that they've adopted, they really try to, number one of the things that is part of the Common Core standards now is the importance of nonfiction texts. So all publishers now are really trying to integrate those social studies, science, math, different types of subject areas into the literature and nonfiction texts that they use. And so with that, teachers have the opportunity, publishers are using the standards that are for the grade level to also select texts that make sense for the grade level's science standards. With that said, how a teacher is able to skillfully integrate a FOSS unit at the exact same time, it is a challenge, and that's something that at an individual level teachers may juggle or navigate, but in terms of implementation at a district level where we haven't aligned those two things.
That also might be a place for the Common Core specialist teachers to assist in some of that at each site, depending upon their specialty. I just want to make one comment. I understand the need for this separate text given the immersion program and the unification of the curriculum at Hatch. I just hope that also moving forward that there's the flexibility for some of the teachers' college reading and writing to still be integrated at Hatch so that we also have that uniformity across our district in terms of what children are learning. So hopefully that will be taken into consideration in that flexibility of implementing these materials.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions or comments? Okay, thank you, Joy.
Thank you.
So that brings us to item 12B, which is to discuss and conduct a public hearing for the 2017-2018 Local Control Accountability Plan. I am opening the public hearing on the LCAP. Do you have any comments from the public? You all already had so many opportunities to comment that there's just nothing more to be said. Good job, Joy and Jane and the whole team, all the principals. Any discussions from a board level? Further comments, discussions?
One question, when does the process begin working on
22nd.
July 1.
22nd. 22nd, you approve this one, and the 23rd, we begin next year's.
You actually do.
We actually do, and it starts right away. There's no, it's just a continuous thing.
Yeah, well, that's something undertaking.
I just want to commend all of you on the number of outreach and the way that you structured it this year, having gone to the family outreach engagement at the county and trying to really make sure that we weren't just adding to the burden of parents and asking about this, but incorporating it into already existing parent opportunities and looking at that list of all the different opportunities that you guys went to and presented that. It was just, it was really wonderful. So, good job, and lots of other great things that we're implementing. So, it's exciting to have this strategic educational plan. Any further questions or comments, discussion from the board? Okay, public hearing is closed. Brings us to item 12C, discuss and conduct public hearing on proposed 2017-2018 district budget. Public hearing is open. I know you guys want to talk about the budget. No questions, comments, discussions. We wish the governor would give us more money. Any questions or discussions among board members? Okay, public hearing is closed. That brings us to item 13, communications, board members. Which way do we want to start?
I'll start.
Okay.
I had the distinct pleasure, it was only a day, no, it was actually on Tuesday, was it not, of accompanying Superintendent Euster to the graduation of the Middle College High School at CSM, and handed their certificate to our lone student graduating this year, who was Miss Callie Conklin, who's headed for Loyola Marymount College. It was an interesting evening. The kids were great, and there's some very talented students who displayed their talent in art and music, which was really wonderful to see. It was largely kid-led up to a point, and then things kind of, anyway, it was a great experience. I'll say no more.
We're in the home stretch. The 100 days of May are over. The 105 days of June are well underway. So I just want to extend a sincere thank you to all of the staff, the admin, the teachers, district staff, everybody involved in our schools, parents, fellow board members as well. I think we've obviously seen a lot of really great, huge progress this year, and I feel like every meeting that we have, we can see a big push. It's like a big ship, right? But we have all these different partners working together in multiple different ways, some really creative, right? Especially when it comes to budget things and everything else. But I just want to say, thank you for all the partnership and all the hard work, and we're almost there. So hang in there, just a couple of weeks left, and yeah, let's celebrate. And looking forward to all the graduations coming up in the next couple of weeks too. It's been an exciting couple of weeks, so thank you.
Okay, so I wanted to comment on a couple of events. One was Kinder Night, and I got to see Joy demonstrating a backpack and everything the kids need to bring, which was actually awesome. And it was so fun watching parents sorting it all out. And as a parent of two children who've already graduated, I'm like, I don't remember doing something like this. So it was really nice to see the representation from all of the schools. It was held at El Granada, and so that was really exciting to see our future graduates that are going to be starting. The high school music concert was this week, and it's so fun to hear the ensembles at the end of the year. So here was choir and jazz band, and when the students gel and just, it's awesome. That's my favorite concert of the year. And it interesting, very nice that Main Street Goldworks now has a piece of jewelry that there's a percentage of funds that goes straight back to the music department at the high school. So if you buy a silver pendant or a gold pendant, a treble clef, and it goes right back to the schools, and they did a raffle. So just, I don't know who came up with it, but it's really nice that they were actually there to participate as well. I had the great pleasure of joining Superintendent Euster and Freya at Senator Hill's town hall for school districts. And we're in good company with all of the challenges on budgets, definitely. And it was very nice to see that Senator Hill listens with a very serious ear and trying to communicate back through the legislative channels and budget committees. So we're not an island unto ourselves. It is a very complex undertaking working with the state, but we've got good people to communicate with, and I appreciate all of Crystal's troubleshooting and answering questions last minute, and that's such a strength for us. So, thank you.
Thank you, Kim. So first off, I did finish my site visit, so thank you very much, Jarrett at Cunha, for hosting me just yesterday, and for Raj at Pillarcitos for hosting me as well. And I got to do another trip out to the farm. Unfortunately, it wasn't on a cooking day, so I didn't get to taste the delicious strawberry shortcake that had been made 2 days before. But I also want to recommend that anybody who hasn't yet take a little trip with the students out to the farm. It's a really great program, and they're now working on community funding for that program because the original grant has already been used up, but it really seems to benefit the students. And talking to Raj and the farm manager talked about just how much more relaxed the students are when they come back from the farm, and it's just a really wonderful part of that. So I also wanted to say, just from the Cunha visit, 2 of the math teachers thanked me for the approval of the CPM materials and how much they're enjoying using them and how they're working through and figuring out what needs to be done next year. So I wanted to pass that thank you on to the board, because oftentimes we just hear negative things, and it's always nice to hear those positive thank yous. Reiterate what Kim said about heading to the Senator Hill Community budget meeting, and the good news on that was that he did decide to introduce another piece of legislation on the Flipper District. Still don't know where that will go, but who knows, fingers crossed. Miracles happen. We really appreciate his support on that, so that's been really wonderful. Just want to say congratulations to the students and the teachers that we honored earlier tonight. And one of the things that I love about this community is how connected people are. So one of those students I remember when she did gymnastics in the Fair Longview Talent Show, and another of the women was a teacher to my daughter, and the other woman is a grandmother to somebody my daughter plays soccer with. And I love those connections about our community, and I think it's one of the things that makes it really special. So congratulations to all of them. I attended the Kent Awards, which was really wonderful, and it was actually my first time. And we needed to get 2 for the whole school district in order for me to end up going. So congratulations to Hatch and Pillarcitos for the awards that evening. And it was really wonderful having parents and students and others also there to get that award. And I know that I heard from some afterwards that it was really wonderful to be recognized in that way. So not only was the district recognized, but the individuals who really led those efforts were also recognized. And I think that can be really powerful. It's also great to hear all the different programs that they do in other schools as well. I also want to just give a little thank you to all the scholarships that our community gives out to our graduates. It's really a wonderful part of being a part of this community. And then last but not least, I want to say thank you to Tricia for 2 years of service on the board. We wish you well in your movement to UC Davis, and as is the tradition, we have a little present for you. So enjoy your time there and your studies, and thank you so much for your time. You're going to open it? All right. This is watching people open.
Shall I read the characters, or?
Whatever you would like.
Okay.
These are to give you energy through all of your long study nights at college.
Coffee, yes.
Chocolate-covered espresso beans.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Congratulations. Hopefully it's your first swag.
We don't know if it's cold in Vegas, we know it.
In the winter, it fluctuates. Thank you so much. Congratulations. We're excited to hear about all of your adventures and whatnot. So hopefully you'll come back and visit. You know we have very exciting meetings with all these budget talks.
You won't need to discuss it.
Yeah. So that leads us to your communication, sorry.
All right, so I'll end it off with my last report.
Starting with El Granada, they had their 46th annual Arts and Science Day, which I had the privilege to volunteer at, and it was very fun. I finally got to experience what all my El Granada peers always talked about. And for a whole day, the students visited parent-led and hands-on workshops with art and science themes, and they've been loving this day for so long that grandparent volunteers who experienced Arts and Science Day as students came back and just helped out, which was really cool. Their annual ice cream social, art show, and open house was a wild success with teachers excited about the great turnout. And El Granada is also doing a community service project called the Crayon Initiative, where they will be collecting used crayons and then sending them to a nonprofit that recycles those crayons into new ones. So yeah, it's very good for the environment and also for the kids. Fair Longview had a successful CASP testing session, and they are also honored to continue their environmental science theme with Oceans Week. And they had classes addressing ocean acidity, rip currents, squid dissections, etc. And that is going to be my major, so I'm really happy that the schools are continuing that. And they learned about mangrove forests, seagrove meadow, and coral reefs. And they will also continue to hold their mindful classes to their staff and parents every Tuesday, and also at Moon Ridge, which I think is the coolest part. So they'd like to thank their volunteers, staff, and families. And Half Moon Bay High is so ready for the summer. Teachers, staff, students. Like Miss Kim said, the chorale and jazz band had their last concert on Tuesday, which I also attended. But next Tuesday at 7 p.m., it will be the marching band and concert band's last concert, and you'll see all the seniors crying. It's always really nice to see that. And yeah, come check them out and see what they've been working on the whole year. And last Thursday, as mentioned, many seniors received generous scholarships from community donors, and we would really like to thank all of them for just giving us that boost in our first year out of high school. It's really, thank you, thank you. And tomorrow, Half Moon Bay High will have their yearbook assembly and also their first ever throwback Cunha dance, and we're really excited for that day. And all of you are invited to come to both, either or, but you know, throwback dance is always a fun one. And yeah, your finals are coming up June 13th through June 15th, and graduation will be on June 15th, which I will all see you there. So thank you, and
I'm sorry.
this is going to be your new school board rep, Cesar Sarabia. So he will be here, and if you would like to meet him, shake his hand, talk to him after this meeting, he's right here. So, I'm sorry.
Taking it on.
So many of the events that I was at have been mentioned, the J. Russell Kent Awards, the meeting with Senator Hill. I also attended an educational roundtable with Assemblyman Mullen. I'm on the educational committee for the Assemblyman, and more of the conversations about the state with a strong plea that please, state, just tell the truth about this. You know, you're pushing the burden onto the school districts to raise and get the funds that we need to continue. It's very hard if you send the message out that everything's okay and we're okay financially for us to do parcel taxes, bonds, and the things we need to do to run. Just tell everybody, you're not funding education like we'd like to. We're only going to get to 07, 08 levels. We're deferring stuff like mad. Just tell us. We can deal with anything. We continue our commitment to the youth of this area, but you got to tell us what we're up against and what we're dealing with. So we put that message out. And on the other side of the equation, then I had the great pleasure of attending, I think I made it to every open house in this sequence. Huge thank you to the principals. There were nights where there were 3 and 4 events lined up on one night, and they made sure I had parking and that I could get in and out. It was kind of a military operation, starting from Kings to Fairlawn View to El Granada to the high school. And it was great to just be able to spend time with parents, to say thank you to our staff and our teachers, and to watch the scholarships being awarded. And I must say that Tricia got several when I was there to witness them, and the amazing generosity of our community. Yeah, there were $500 scholarships, there were $1,000, there were also $5,000 scholarships, $8,000 scholarships. I believe we give away more than $150,000, Mr. Nazar?
Over 180.
Over $180,000 in scholarships to our kids. So it was truly an incredible event, and I was thrilled to have a part in it. And it's the end of the school year. We're all going like mad. It's great to watch the culmination of all of the efforts that all of our fantastic parents and students and staff, and really watching the pinnacle of it all, which will be the graduations of our seniors, and the list of what these young men and women are doing next year is just awe-inspiring, from Ivy League to often to the community colleges for specialized training, to I'm going to take a year off and I'm going off to Ethiopia to do work over there. It's an incredible thing, and it is a testament to this community and all of the support that it surrounds its students with. It's really an honor to be of service to this community.
Thank you, Jane. It takes us to item 14, consent items. Do I have a motion to approve? Second? Questions, comments, discussions? Because we don't really have discussions. I just wanted to call out real quick the donations to the district, which are listed there, so thank you again. Our community does so much for us. We appreciate it. All in favor? Aye. Passes 5+1. Action items, there are 15. There's one, adopt resolution number 14-17 to update the local plan of San Mateo County SELPA to add Kip Valiant Community Prep.
So all school districts in this county belong to the special education, the SELPA. And as we add the charter schools into the county, the charter schools either go through the districts they're working with, or they can become actual members of the SELPA. Kip Valiant has made the election to become a member of the SELPA, and so what you see is the formality of them joining the SELPA.
All right, great. Do I have a motion to adopt the resolution 14-17?
Move.
A second?
Second.
Okay, it's a roll call vote. It's a resolution, starting with you. Oh, do you want discussion? Yeah, sorry, questions, comments, discussion?
I would love to know where the school is. Anybody know?
That's actually a big charter school. They have them everywhere.
I know, but Kip Valiant is.
Chain?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a
Kip
chain.
is the name of the charter school operator, but Kip Valiant.
They're in the county?
Yeah, they have to be in the county to be in the
Kip
county.
Valiant Community Prep.
Yeah.
There was no location in the board packet, I don't believe.
No, I couldn't find it. What grade level is it in?
So Kip Valiant Prep it opens in 2017, so.
Kip Valiant Prep opens in 2017 to serve the communities of East Palo Alto and Belle Haven.
Good to know. And,
Grade level, hold on. It'll be K through 8.
Okay, okay. Thank you for that information.
Okay.
That's all the question I have.
Okay, any further questions, discussion? Seeing none, roll call vote.
Aye.
Aye. Passes 5+1. Takes us to item 16, future board agenda items. Approve textbook adoption for the Spanish immersion K-5 curriculum, which we saw tonight in the discussion item. Approve the LCAP, which we had our hearing about tonight. Approve the proposed budget, which we also had our hearing about tonight. Approve policy maintenance updates, which we do routinely, and our quarterly report on Williams uniform complaints. Upcoming events, item 17. We have our Measure S COC meeting on June 5th, our Big Lift meeting on June 6th. Our June 6th meeting is also the Education Committee Chamber meeting, the district office at 4, and I'll be attending that. And again, those were quite informative and interesting meetings. The June 14th is the Farallon View promotion ceremony. Just real quick review, who has that in there to attend? Okay, Sophia's attending. The Cunha graduation ceremony is also June 14th at 6 p.m., and Rob and I will be attending. The last day of school for all students is June 15th, and June 15th is also the El Granada Elementary School promotion at 8:30, and I'll be there, Martha. It's also the Hatch Elementary promotion at 9 a.m., and Sophia will be there. The Kings Mountain Elementary promotion ceremony at 10 a.m., and Rob is going to go. The Pilarcitos High School graduation ceremony at 10 a.m., and Kim is going to go. And then there's also Los Listos, and I'm going to attend that one, I believe, and that's Tuesday night. The Half Moon Bay High School graduation ceremony at 6:30 p.m. on June 15th. It's Kim and Kirk. And then June 16th is the last workday for certificated staff. And can I ask the board for a motion to go past 10? We are going to be returning to closed session.
I'll make a motion to go past 10.
Second? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Thank you all. That ends the public session of our board meeting. Appreciate you all being here. Thank you.